And also, on the exec session minutes for July 28th and November 10th, I don't know where we are with that. I haven't received anything updated recently. All the others are updated and those are fine as far as I can see. Those are the ones that Tony Powell's office did. And I'm not sure about the 7/28 and 11/10 minutes. I haven't seen any copies of those for a month or so.
I can't remember,
I
but
think they may have already been approved.
I thought we approved
I thought we had.
one or two of them.
Yeah, so I don't want to approve something until they've been approved.
Right.
We need to go back and do research on those. So we either postpone or eliminate those. If it's already been done, we don't need to do it again.
Right. And I just have a comment. I don't think this is anything that requires not completing the minutes unless, I don't think it does, but in reading through these again, I was going back through on some of the work session items, and several of them on one of the previous meeting stated that they'll be placed, and this is talking about the work session items that we've had discussion, and it's going to be placed on our February 9th agenda. But in the work session minutes, it doesn't specify whether we mean that it's going on the work session agenda or whether it's going on the February 9th regular meeting agenda. And I think in the future, we need to designate that on the work session minutes. Because a lot of those items were just things that were going to be placed on our work session agenda, not the public meeting agenda. And to a reader, looking at, if someone looked at our work session and saw that we discussed this item and we're going to put it on our agenda for the next meeting, I would be thinking that they meant for the regular meeting, and somebody might show up for a meeting vote and then there's nothing on
So it's
there.
just another discussion.
Right. So, but most of those were just being put to the next work session.
I don't know, and again, I don't recall, that's a good point, but I don't recall in our conversation if we, because the minutes have to reflect what was actually said, and so I know a lot of times I'll just say that to carry that over to the next meeting. I don't know if I've ever made that actual distinction, so that's kind of something I make sure I do, I don't know. I don't recall.
Yeah, I think we need to make sure that we're stating that, but, you know, I feel like through the discussion, it's pretty evident whether we mean it's going on the work session or the regular, so if we all need to be more clear about that to get it documented, then we need to do that. But like I said, I don't think it's anything we need to hold up anything for, but I think we just need to be clear on that going forward.
Here's the other thing, you know, y'all had a set of executive session minutes that came out to you, then you got a set of executive session minutes that were rewritten, that were presented to you at the last executive session to review. You need to be clear if you're approving them, which group you're approving, because there were some substantial problems with the first set that came out. Legal issues, and then secondly, there is the custody of those and the execution of those, because internally there were privileged communications internally regarding personnel matters that go in different directions. So as we handle those, I think they probably first go back to Mr. Sanders for his dissemination to the proper place as far as executive session minutes and those that they're privileged for. So it's just, I want to make sure that
Well, on what authority, I understand the privilege, and I think Mr. Sanders cut those minutes because of the privilege. But I would disagree that the executive session minutes would go to Mr. Sanders and not the city clerk, because Mr. Sanders has no authority over any minutes.
this is hypothetical for me. Purely hypothetical. But if it were an executive session that involved an employee that was a custodian, then obviously there's discussion in there that was privileged.
But you're not saying as a standard procedure, executive session
Oh, no,
minutes
no,
need to go to Mr. Sanders.
No, there's just two sets of
Okay.
them that need to go in a different direction from the normal
I
direction.
understand, okay.
So it just, and so I was sort of routing the standard from
I
sort.
just, let's make sure we're on the same page.
And then we're fine. So.
All right, anything else? All right, again, no invited guests will have a report from Ms. Sanders. Mr. Scott sent an email that the DDA will not have a report tonight. I'd like to ask that on the next council meeting, either Mr. Scott or Mr. Van Otten, somebody give us a report, because I know the DDA has been meeting, but we haven't received a report from them in some time. So I doesn't know what's going on with the DDA.
We're gonna start sending out the minutes of board meetings as soon as they're done, and I don't need any time.
At one time, we had it set up where we had our boards reporting once a month. We broke it up into 2 monthly.
That's how it's set up now. Ms. Richardson, at the beginning of the year, Ms. Richardson, at the beginning of the year, sent out a master list to all the boards saying,
Was it
you're this
monthly?
month, I think, and rotated it and asked if anybody had any conflicts with it.
Was it monthly? Was it set up for DDA to report monthly? That's the question.
I think it was every other month.
Okay, we set it up monthly. And I don't think council changed that. So it should be still set up so that the, DDA should be reporting monthly. And the other boards, like, all the others do, the Board of Appeals, they're here every month. But we set it up so that we hear, council would hear from every committee and board once a month. And that's the way it should be, not bi-monthly. So we need to reschedule that and send it out correctly as the council has requested. That's fine, but it's monthly, we need to send out that way.
We need to make sure also, I just thought of this, I don't think we've gotten a report from the URA. I don't know if they're part of that list, but if not, we need to add them to that list.
They might have to that.
Old business, we have a first reading, which we'll wait till our March 9th.
Is it March 9th?
On item A and same on item B. Mr. Thompson, anything you need to tell us about either of those for tonight?
It was just reading, right?
Is
Nothing's
this-
changed, it just redos from the.
Item C is the second reading on the Linwood development, Mr. Thompson.
Sure, this is basically a continuation of the adjacent property over at the old Williams tract. So 14 acres, they requested to continue the subdivision or that type of subdivision, and basically the same homes in a little larger footprint, 14 acres. I believe 45 new lots. The amenity area is going to change. It's going to be adjacent to the other amenity area behind it in Waterford Township to minimize any impacts of that. Most of the variances are the same or less stringent than the others, so we've recommended approval of the future land use is fine. It was currently zoned for Orchards development, 64 units, quadruplex ranch style dwelling. In the past, this would reduce the density to less than 4 and would make it RS 150 zoning in the low density land use designation.
Jason, Mr. Thompson, I understand that tonight is just the one tract of land, but overall, how many acres will we have over?
14 and 25, close to 40 with just the residential portion of it. But that leaves the remainder of what was left over for the CCRC zoning, which I believe is 21 or 22 acres, including the detention pond off the tree.
And so these, the 45 houses and then the other development, 92 houses, so roughly.
Close to 100, like maybe 140 around there.
And is that gonna be over, is it gonna, or is the development overall, what will be the, I guess, the density is what I'm trying to get to?
Yeah, it will have to be less than 4 units per acre on both tracks in order to even balance. You can have a little bit more on one and each one will have to meet that.
Okay. Other questions for Mr. Thompson? We also have the second reading on the solicitation ordinance, Ms. Carlton.
There's nothing for me to add. It's just verbiage from the FBI.
Then we have the award of the stormwater drainage system. Mr. Sanders in Wisconsin, anything?
The pricing was very, very good, under budget, so we may be able to get some, a little extra work done. But, and I understand that we have one vendor.
One contractor, won all 7 projects, and we had verified, Craig called, and verified that, just to reiterate that, in our pre-bid meeting, we stated that everything had to be done by June. So, he assured us it could, so,
And that vendor is,
A&S Pay. And we've worked with them before, and they've
Qualified.
done a great job, and they work really well with residents and their property, and so,
the recommendation is the award, and to allow the mayor to sign the contract when it's put together and reviewed.
Any more questions? Next is for South Limit to use the stage for the festival that they came and spoke to the Commerce Club about. Anybody have any questions about that? Then we have the stack contract. Mr. Sanders, anything you need to tell us about this year's contract?
Stat contract is basically a continuation with a new calendar. Lisa, representing our rec department in Briscoe, had a chance to go to Stats board meeting and do some, what I felt like was very good coordination with Stat and their events. And I think that, overall, they do a good job. Very good job for our community, and we're recommending the approval of the continuing contract. We did have a discussion with Mr. Whitaker, our auditor, who has performed audits over the last 3 years of Stat's financial performance, and in checking on things, we don't have to do a full audit. He can do a review, which saves them money. I feel comfortable with, and that's what we're recommending for the next year. Instead of a full audit, a financial review.
I know at one point we had talked about, I think Chris had started the food trucks in the park and things like that. We had talked about putting that into Stats calendar. But I don't see those in here. Have we discussed those? Because we didn't want to have competing events, so we're not going to do that anymore.
No, we aren't going to have competing, we are not going to have competing events. That was part of that discussion. I think there's an internal discussion going on about food trucks on the Stat board. And I think there will be coordination, hopefully, maybe a major event, maybe having an athletic event with food trucks, popcorn in the park that night at Briscoe. We've discussed something like that, but they will be coordinated, and we will not be in competition with each other.
But nothing that's ready to go into the calendar?
No.
Anybody else have questions?
We will have, so just so the record, we will have food trucks at the Memorial Day, dedication of Memorial Day weekend, that's Saturday night. That's not a stat event, but as far as goes the city, we will have it there that night.
And the first thing, the Snellville Beach Blast, when I first read it, I thought it said May 3rd, but it was actually May 30th, right?
Yes.
Wait a second, that's,
And then the
Couple
farmer's
days.
market starts the next week.
6/6.
Yeah.
Consideration action against House Bill 170, that's the transportation bill. I don't know if y'all read the GMA update. It looks like the transportation committee's made changes to it. So this was originally on our February 9th agenda before they had made those changes. So I'll be withdrawing it at this point in time unless somebody else wants to pick it up.
You gotta keep your eyes on it though, because it is a moving target.
It is, and as a citizen, I don't know if it's the best thing, but as a city, I don't think we necessarily want to come out against it right now.
Right.
All right.
There have been a lot of changes.
That brings us to our work session agenda.
Which, just before we jump into that, if I might, can we figure out what's going on with the PDF documents that we're getting the agenda in? The bookmarks aren't working, and I don't have, not everything, each item of business is bookmarked. So it's making it really difficult to maneuver in the iPad. And I know sometimes things don't show up if you're doing the PDF or a scan through one way or another. Sometimes an annotate, it doesn't work one way or the other, but half the bookmarks work and half of them, and one or two don't. And then there's several items. The last things on the agenda are not even bookmarked in here, so if we could just do a review of that and see what needs to happen and make sure that's getting done so that it works on, I guess, the iAnnotate, or if you just tell us what software we need to use to look at it.
What happens is the planning department sends over their stuff bookmarked,
Uh-huh.
and then they have me do a bookmark in a different software, so maybe they're not compatible with each other.
Syncing up.
Mhm.
Well, one of the planning and zoning things, or I think two of the bookmarks are there in work. The other one for Linwood is, it looks like it's there, but it doesn't work. And then the last couple of new business things don't have a bookmark. So I don't know if when you put in those planning department ones, if it throws those off, or I don't know.
Did you notice sometimes if you hit one, if you're in top level and you hit it, it brings up another group?
Yes.
Sometimes they work and sometimes they don't.
Yeah, and they're not working, at least on this one tonight. So like I said, I know it's different sometimes if you scan something one way versus putting the PDF together another way. We just need to figure it out so that it'll work.
We'll have an internal discussion about that.
Okay. And if y'all want to send something to me to test it, I'll be happy to do that.
Well, you got the newer one too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that may be an issue too between the old iPad and the new
New
one.
ones. I wouldn't think so if you're using iAnnotate. But
All right, so on the work session agenda, we have correspondence. This is an older letter, I need to bring it sooner, you probably already heard this, but it's about our opportunity zone application that we did not, we were not approved for our opportunity zone, basically.
A lot of people around the state were not approved.
And then,
Mayor, I'd like to add a discussion item on the agenda, to be J, and it's the city's requirement for proof of gross earnings for business licenses.
well, actually, I think it will be A.
Okay.
Because Ms. Kraus asked that the FARS, was it FARS road?
Yes, the bars were in the section.
Okay, then the other side.
Mr. Powell, update on the RFQ for the zoning ordinance?
Before that, can I do my
I'm sorry.
section? I don't usually use that, but I did, but I need it tonight. This is a request, this is coming from entity related to the road abandonment entity, it's really Linwood. I'm giving you a quick claim deed with, it's really the exhibits to that are important.
Is it in 4 years now?
Yeah, I was getting, I was.
You guys are on,
Yeah,
okay, are we all the same?
They're all the same, yeah. And here's all that's happening, is that in all of the legal descriptions that were given for abandonment by all of those streets over in Surrey Farms, they think they missed a spot. And you see, this the red one, this red area, which is right at the intersection of New Hampton and Smoky Hollow Court. It's just a little bitty triangle, and that comes from the redesign that the hospital was doing in 2006, and the difference between that and the overall drawing. And what I believe is that y'all have abandoned this, you've authorized the execution, and the old resolutions all take care of it. This quick claim deed that I handed out to you is for the mayor to execute. It would be a secondary execution based on your last action. That's what it's for. I don't think it takes any further action of this council to deal with it, but I wanted to make sure y'all knew and that the mayor was okay with not putting it back through another process as far as soon. That would be one we just signed tonight with the rest of the stuff. Second thing is you have in your inbox a reorganization and some redraft of the alcohol ordinance. And we have been trying to get that in a form where the council can look at and consider what are really some drafting issues that come from staff and it's a really good job. But that's the first thing. This is taking on a little bit of a monster that the state creates because they passed alcohol legislation over the years for every little compartment that goes in it. And it's our current ordinance is organized the way the state passed it. It matches up with their enabling legislation, which makes no sense when somebody comes in and asks for a permit. So your staff has really gone in and reorganized that. We had definitions sort of throughout the document. Now they're all pulled into one area in the front. And then you'll see it's got a process, it's got some general requirements and then a process of application. It's just put in order. Now in your inbox are areas that are marked in yellow. And those are really designating the change areas. Everything else on your copy, and you can see it's this yellow. Everything else on that inbox version is just exactly the way it is now. It's just in a different location. And so you'll see better order of definitions, better order of the regulations, and then you'll have flagged for you every change. Some of the changes are very minor, but I wanted to call it to your attention. And when it gets to your work session agenda, you know, those things that are highlighted, if it doesn't seem like it's an issue, I'll bring it up to you, but there are very few of those. The big issues that are on the table are a section, and it's section 6-20 in your inbox version, and it has to do with personal service licenses. And this is a special use permit process for beer and wine sales inside a personal service industry. So it's something that's getting popular. You see it in art, you see it in studios, you see it in spas and that sort of thing. It's where alcohol would normally be served, and it does give that. Now that is not a council originated thought. And that's really the reason why we're putting it to you in this way, is because when something hits your work session agenda, it looks like you've endorsed it, and all of these, none of these ideas are really your ideas. So we want you to see it, and then when it hits your work session agenda, it'll be after your full review, when y'all want to put it back on there for that. But these are some creative ideas with regard to that, and to the extent y'all want to give instructions to edit that before it actually hits an agenda in terms of, but it's not something you should have to take credit for.
And it's not something that just came out of the blue either. I mean, we know what the market is out there. We hear from a lot of our vendors, and you know, Jason and his staff try to make it fit within the ordinance. Nathan has been very good and flexible to make sure that we touch all our legal bases. I know all of y'all are familiar with most of what's going on out there and some of the requests that have come before you, but I think this is it's a good update to the ordinance, matching the business sector that's out there right now.
These are other creative things that have been discussed in the process of editing that are not even in this draft, and it is in dealing with home delivery processes. There are some companies that would like to be able to pick up and resale, like they do food products, resale alcohol products. That's not in here. It's just something that came up. You've got issues that are private party sort of functions, and I believe the state is exempting those things. And so we're going to confirm that, but you don't see any regulation of private party or business parties where alcohol is not actually being sold, it's being given away as a party function. And like golf charity events, that kind of thing. Those are not regulated events, and we're just going to confirm that they're not regulated events, and we don't have to worry about it from the state regulatory standpoint. Then there's one more, it has to do with manufacture. There's some creativity in the manufacture where you can privately do it. There are private brewing and manufacturing that are in place and incorporated into this ordinance. But when there are businesses that allow you to come to them and then private brew with them, that's been something we've been asked to look at, but it's not in this ordinance. And if you see that one, it will come to you by separate drafts. Enjoy.
Thank you. Added to my list.
That's one.
Update on RFQ for the zoning ordinance?
We have had several discussions with potential vendors, folks who will bid on the work. Oh, you need one of those. Who will bid on the work for our zoning ordinance and development regulations update. And we believe that the best way to go forward is to do a unified development ordinance. And I've got a little handout here which sort of gives you a background on that. It puts everything into puts everything into a one code, basically. It's kind of a one-stop shop. And it's Jason, what do you think? I bet 50% of the local governments out there have gone to a UDO. And it is going to be whether you do that or not, we're still looking at a long process. There's public participation is critical in this process. Their review and knowledge of what we have on the books right now is critical. So it's a 15-month. I've asked for a 15-month completion date once they start. And I think we'll have, probably from the folks that I've talked to, we'll probably have 5 or 6 interested parties in this work. And a couple other things that you probably have not seen in there before. There is a type of code. It's called a form-based code, where you get a little more specific as to what buildings look like, what the landscaping looks like, what the streetscape looks like. And it is something that I think, especially in the town center and some of our other gateways, we definitely need to consider. I'm not saying it has to be in there, but I think we need an entity working on our update who is familiar and has worked on that before. There's a Form-Based Code Institute, FBCI. Check out their website. There are a couple of very good videos basically showing, giving you an idea of what a form-based code would look like, and the advantages there. So it's, I think we're ready to go with it. I think we will have. I know we got burned on the town green. I don't think we will this time as far as bidders are concerned. So I'm just giving you a copy of that and telling
Where
you.
is the form-based language?
It's just in one of the sections.
Page 2.
If you look at the description of the UDO to be developed, you've got capable of innovative and creative approaches to land use regs, including exploration and discussion of form-based codes. We want somebody who has had some experience. It's also down below in the scope, and I believe it's also in the requirements. We want some folks who are familiar, and I know they're out there. I've talked to several of them, and I really believe this is the best way to go. It will put us, I'd say, at least ahead of most folks. And when you're looking at where we've been and the kind of the hodgepodge of changes that we've made, the sign ordinance, it's been updated within the last 2 years, I think. that can be tweaked. There are other areas that we really need to take a close look at. And as I said, public participation, I'm not just talking about the citizenry, I'm talking about business groups and development groups and having input from all parties.
Which, what types of companies do this type of work? Is it like planners or engineering companies or?
It's planners for the most part. I mean, Clark Patterson will probably bid on something like this.
Jacobs and Precision Planning, those types of firms?
And bigger engineering firms have planning departments. And you're gonna we'll get a bid from huge firms like Jacobs and those folks. But it will be you'll have an opportunity. I'm recommending in here that we sit down, review all of the proposals, and make a short list probably, and conduct interviews to make sure that they can do the job, make sure that Snellville is at the top of their list. And so you'll get a lot of smaller kind of boutique firms that's all they do. Tennell Spangler is not a big firm, but they do an excellent job. So you're going to have, it'll be folks from all across the board, but it'll be a planning firm or a planning department in a big engineering firm.
Okay.
This won't necessarily affect the RFP, but I know Mr. Betty was big on the form-based zoning. I think that former Councilman Warner was pushing it, but it seems to me that we received some feedback and it wasn't all positive. So before staff goes too far down that direction, we need to have a policy discussion with mayor and council on that.
Sure, no problem.
Master annexation plans.
All right, we have some information for you today. Put some maps together for targeted annexation areas. We were going to put these on boards, but you'd have to gather around. I think we'll just put it at the table and ask everybody to come and take a look. These are maps from 3 main areas. And I think I sent these out. I don't know if y'all can open those or not and take a look. But we're looking at 78 East, 78 West. Obviously, the conversations we've already had up 124, and then a residential area that was very active in our last zoning case. The 78 East, all of these maps show the vanilla yellowish color. Those are already in the city, and basically we looked at trying to develop a service area and what made sense as far as the annexation targets. These are, it's a start, but it's where I think it's reasonable and feasible and absolutely necessary in some cases to close our service delivery area. I mean, there's a section of our biggest subdivision that's not in the city, and that certainly did not make sense. All of the commercial areas plus the residential further to the east, it didn't make sense that's not in the city. And then trying to tie in the Rosebud Cooper intersections, you know, we reached a little bit when you look at Rosebud heading south, but we wanted to at least highlight those areas to get your input to see what you thought. I mean, I think it's a conversation we need to have with all those property owners.
Let's stop you right there for a second so we can discuss this one. So it's my intention to put these maps, that's why we call this work session for earlier today, so we could discuss this, and then to put them on an agenda for us to vote to approve, so then we can start working towards actually getting the, either the 80% property signatures, or there's another way that we decide for us to do it. So I want to get everyone's thoughts on this first map before we move to any other map or any other discussion. I know I have some concerns, and it's hard to tell. Is this the Kroger Shopping Center here?
This is the
There.
cover.
It is.
So I have some concerns with what we're told is happening with that shopping center, I don't know if we necessarily want to move forward with going over that way towards Rosebud. I think there's been some, information that Kroger may be leaving that shopping center, so I would hate to annex a vacant shopping center. I mean, I know that eventually, hopefully, it'll be rented out to someone else, but, you know, I don't want the citizens to say, why are you bringing in an eyesore? I also don't know necessarily, and I'd like to hear from the chief
You got
about
more
going
than one?
down Rosebud, I think, is it Rose Terrace? I don't know what the advantage would be of that, or if we would have any disadvantage as far as policing is concerned.
Well, I don't think it's any disadvantage. The reason that was included is if we do get the property on Brooks, then we've created an island, and you can't have an island, so we would have
Bring that in.
so that's primarily why that's in there. But I don't think
Well, this is an area that's not highlighted here, and this is a higher end subdivision here.
I think it's in Grayson.
I'm sorry, where are you at?
On Cooper Road,
Pebble
Pebble
Creek.
subdivision, all that, Pebble Farm, whatever it is. And that's high dollars there, that joins our city, I don't know why we don't, we may want to look at that.
I would tend to mix these. I know this piece of property.
Which one, Bob?
It's right here. This is Rosebud
In Midway.
down to Midway at Brushy Ford.
That's a vacant house.
There's a vacant house sitting on this corner, and I know the property owners came to us several years ago wanting to bring this into the city and put a daycare center there, and people went nuts. I mean, the traffic, just in and out of this with this dangerous intersection. I'm afraid that we would wind up taking responsibility for this intersection, and it's kind of a tough intersection here.
I think some of the reason we grabbed some of these outliers too is so that if they do ever develop in the future, that we'll maintain control
Yeah,
on
we
what
will.
happens to and not be basically under Gwinnett County's thumb. So that's kind of where we, even with this one, I know the history, I'll remember it well.
Yeah.
And then even with the Kroger Shopping Center too, we kind of, if it does need to be redeveloped, we can redevelop it under our code, so.
And that's one of the main reasons to annex. I mean, we ran into the
Yes,
problem
we
over here
said
of Tractor Supply, which, you know, had an impact on our citizens, but we didn't have a lot of say in that.
Well, that's
So let's
in the
start
city.
with, no, it's outside city. Let's start with that. Going, the properties that are there in the blue, that are already, that are part of the Summit Chase, extended Summit Chase. Does anyone have a problem going forward with that to make that a unified there? And so that will cover this side of 78. Do we want to go over to the left side of 78? The blue on the left side.
Well, we already have the two.
Right, I'm just talking about this part here up to the
We have a
middle.
problem.
We've got the problem, may as well pick up the good
Yeah.
stuff in between.
And I think we need to analyze this Pebble Creek, wherever that is.
Okay, so we're okay with this part of the blue,
Fine.
and we want to add Pebble Creek possibly, but we need to do an analysis to see, is that okay?
And is that Lee Laboratories there?
It is.
Are we sure we want to bring that in? Aren't they doing top secret weird
That's
stuff?
We want them on our team.
That's where the black helicopter
The monkeys, that's where those monkeys escaped from.
And one of the questions we're asking, are you planning on a crematorium?
No, we're not.
I'm not.
What
I think
about
about that.
on the other side of the yellow, on the left side of 78, that's,
I'll take the
there.
weird code stuff.
What is
We'll leave
that?
the
Those are
crematorium.
this is the, these are two apartment complexes here.
but they don't have a high call volume in those apartment complexes.
And, you know, the chief did not have an issue with,
One's apartments and one's townhomes, isn't it?
they're all
There's two sections of
apartments. One's a
apartments.
gated community, one's a non-gated community. And, but the last time I checked, they don't have that many calls for service. And they do have calls, I mean, any place has calls for service. I mean, you know, every neighborhood in our city. You know, but,
I think they actually have less calls in the neighborhood that's closer to them.
and one thing you have to look at, we have, I know y'all have read the 2030 comp plan. You go back in there and look at some of those statements. this is something that has been needed for a lot of years because it was called for it in the plan. And we're down to probably 4% of developable vacant land in the city. We need some big tracts, so that's why we targeted some of those.
Just like you're talking about, though, Rick, and even with those two apartment complexes, is that if issues exist, then we don't have the jurisdiction to handle it. So it's a whole lot better to have the jurisdiction to be able to go in and do what we think is necessary to do it, because we have had a couple of situations, but they've run either back into Hawthorne Glen or into the apartments when that little Shell station was open, and with a couple of instances there. So, and the trouble with it running into an area where we don't have is that it makes it more difficult for us.
And obviously, tonight, nothing's being voted on, nothing's finalized. We just don't want staff spinning their wheels if there's no interest in that
What
area.
about down,
Am I gonna bring Rudy's in?
So wait,
It
let's,
has to, here.
so that's, we've done with the first area we said.
what about where they're building?
Here's the, where they're finishing out already,
Yeah, we
it's just
already,
kind of unify our
Yeah.
district.
That's not gonna be a problem.
I don't think so.
and so then that, well, and the county can only object if we change the zoning. And so if we bring it in at a equivalent zoning, then they can't issue a legal objection, they can object, but. All right, what about the Progress Shopping Center? Do we still want to focus on it? And then do we want to go further down Rosebud, or do we want to leave Rosebud alone?
Well, if you're in the city on one side of Rosebud, you might as well be in the city on the other side.
I would say we should try, because that is a lot of, these farms, I mean, they're so high,
They're gonna be developed.
yeah, there's a high probability somebody's gonna put some of those lots together and do something with it, and it would be better if we got to choose what that might be.
Then that creates the island problem with the property further down, so we need to find out where we want to stop.
Yeah, we
If we do it like
And
this,
not
we
create an
could,
island.
Well, it wouldn't be an island if we did all this, right?
the island's created when we take this in. If we take certain pieces and leave this one we have to come in.
Wasn't that Almoni that objected, or is that one?
Remember, that was the one right now from the church parking lot, the one house that's in the city.
But you could not, if you did take the program, you could not surround those individual lots on Rosebud there and not give them away out of the, you couldn't go around those lots and not give them away out
You have
of
to
the
get
county.
involved.
And we may run into a problem with the Kroger because Ms. Bird's property there on the intersection, she's objected in the past to coming into the city, so.
That would just be, nobody gets an island.
We couldn't come in because we don't, because
Just have to have a
We
certain
can't
amount
create,
of
we
that would
can't,
be creating an island.
yeah.
You can still
But you
go
got an
down.
island right there.
You can still go down and leave it over here, and you just have to leave the sliver, but it kind of keeps you from going over here.
Well, if you left the Shell station on the corner, would that's still considered an island?
It depends on how far you go past that. You have to have certain continuity with a certain amount of feet with your already parcels that you have. Just like over here, we had to have a certain amount of adjacent road frontage or to be able to bring those
We can
down.
say we're interested in that, but know that we need to start with that one piece of property, because if we can't get that, then there's no point in trying to go further.
You've got a copy of a letter that we put together to send out, just to start the conversation with people. And, you know, that's, I know, after you set some parameters, but we just, it's not, nothing's going to be forced. Hopefully there is enough interest out there. A lot comes in 100% method, and, you know, we may have to go with 60% on some if we get those kinds of requests.
And I think the letter is fine, but I think last time we relied too much on letters and meetings at City Hall. I think that, you know, staff or even mayor and council
we're
maybe
knocking
go
on
out and
doors.
go.
It says that in there.
All right, so does anybody have any questions about the 78 East? Can we go to 78 West?
What did we decide on,
It's gonna be contingent upon that corner piece of property where we go from there.
Okay.
First property.
Over by the biolabs. What did we decide
Yeah,
on
we're
that?
taking them.
Oh, we're taking all of that.
We're gonna try to get all of
We
it.
want all the zombies in.
Well, I'm very familiar with that builder who's been wanting to be in the city.
Oh, he has?
I'll just leave it at that, and of course, I'll get with you. You've met him already, I brought him here, and I'll further discuss that.
Okay.
That should be easy.
So going back, talking about this Kroger side of it, I mean, if we're only working on an 80%, say, yes rate, we're gonna have somebody that's not gonna wanna do it. That really wouldn't impact us from moving forward, right?
Depending on which one was the problem.
Depending on, well, again,
Mhm.
but if, let's just say, and I'm just hypothetical here, if that one corner is only 10% of the no, then you got 90% saying yes, can we move forward?
There's a provision in the law, you only have to have 80% of the property owner's consent, but it becomes a policy question. If there's people that don't want to come into the city, are we going to force them and take their property by coming into the city, even if we can legally do it? So that's something.
Well, they've got the 80-20 rule there in the event that that happens. Right?
Then it becomes a decision for us.
Right,
Just-
okay. So we still can make the decision.
Right.
And we still don't know if we have those issues unless we go out. and
Right.
ask.
We gotta discover them first.
Might be good issue. That means another, you got 80% of the new one.
Right. I mean, we gotta learn from this process, I think.
All right.
All right, then, this is 78.
This is really a much easier call. It just follows the commercial quarter and draws, I'm not exactly sure where the status is on the connector road, but it's going to open up some more developable property, and we just tried to go out to High Point and slightly beyond.
And so what is on the right side of 78? What businesses does that encompass?
On the south side?
Does that get La Consuela from there or whatever?
All that restaurant road.
Gives you what their
Bulldog
concept,
Tire.
what their side.
And so then does it
Yeah, that's John Boy's.
John Boy's restaurant.
Or whatever that is.
The old Hooters.
We didn't put it in there. They
No,
cited
that's,
It's on Terra, I think.
No.
It's probably, those got two members there.
Well, the pizza places.
Bill's in and out. Does
Control
control
center.
though. We wanted to assemble these.
Hotel is closed, but there's a new owner, a gentleman from New York that reopened. I know he hasn't had a lot of business, but he has been pretty there.
The bug problem and the rat problem they've had for a while.
That extra crispy pepperoni, bro. Just for those guys? I think so. Martin said it best.
Why is that one?
Yeah. I'm fine with all of this.
This is gonna be good now. What's this? This says
What's the story with that?
that's right away.
That's all.
Oh, right away is the one at home.
Yeah, I gotta give this one one more thought.
That's a pretty easy call.
Can you email these maps?
You already did.
Do I have them?
If you want copies too, come by, I'll print them out for you.
Okay.
A lot easier to look at them like this one.
Yeah, it is.
This is the residential folks who have indicated some interest, at least one of the three HOAs. There have been discussions among the three. We're going to, when Mr. Anderson gets back in town, we're going to sit down and go over this map and this area here. It is, it's high-end residential.
Go for it.
And I think we look at all of this residential. This is the one that we talked
The
about.
conversations that I've had.
Right, but I mean, either all high-end or all Brookwood, I mean, I think that it's good
I
to
think
have
we
that
gotta
in
be
the city.
careful this way. We need to focus first on this, like we talked about in the retreat, is going down more towards Brookwood. We need this and all of this.
Right.
And I know, we talked about it at the retreat, but I don't see the map for it, actually going down to the high school, going down Dogwood, because I know the church there, obviously the church isn't
That would be
tax
over
value
here.
to the city, but I think they have some interest. And I know that some, the Sullivans and some people in Brookwood Manor have communicated some interest in Brookwood Manor as being $1 million home. So if we could also add
Okay.
a map
Let's,
going down that
let's
road. I know
add-
that
Let's
one
look at that.
subdivision.
Let's look at that.
So it would be down this way.
Right, started carrying.
I know there's a problem subdivision in there, but if we can get through that subdivision.
We'll trade them Hawthorne Place.
And a future traffic.
I don't mean a problem that it's a bad subdivision. I mean, we weren't able to get through them.
How about it, push on the annexation?
well, may have turned over, a lot of things could have happened.
Okay, so if we can maybe get that, was there any other areas we discussed at the retreat that are included in this map? If we can maybe get those changes made and put on the next work session agenda, and then we'll put it on the second agenda in March for some action.
So it's on the west one, and then I don't think there was any changes on the PCS on there.
This one's all good, and then
Well,
just
if we can get this changes made, and then we'll discuss some of the west of it next month.
Yeah, yeah.
And,
what
you
changes
know,
are you making on it?
coming over to this side of the there is, just for your knowledge, when it comes to service delivery, obviously, public safety is one investment we will have to make. And there are, we figured, what, 4.25 miles of surface street that we would become responsible for. Most of that in riding it is it's in good shape, but that is, that's something that we would, we'd obtain the responsibility for.
What about, in my mind, the roads are not, I mean, they are in good shape, they're not that big of an issue, and we control right up to a lot of these areas anyway, so I don't think we can. But in my mind, the biggest obstacle for the residential is going to be sanitation. So do we have any idea as to cost-wise, what this will cost us in extra sanitation fees?
Let's see.
You'll be looking at probably what we're paying out now. Everything considered, because you'll have to add in use of the recycling center as well. So probably $10 a month per
house?
house.
But then we'll also pick up some income from some of the commercial areas,
Yeah.
A lot of income from the course. You have to realize,
I mean, as far as, it's just in the garbage fund, or,
Yeah.
Well, you know, that would go with it, but look at the tax base would be,
but we don't, you gotta realize, we don't realize a lot of profit from the sanitation. It costs us almost as much in that.
We just need a bigger truck.
If we look at, we're probably looking right about a potential of 450 more residential units. And that's 450 more sanitation fees. But if you look in that letter, the advantages to the property owners are
that's
real.
$4,500 a month more.
You can
sanitation, but
quantify it.
I
And
think you justify it. I think that those houses in there, you're not, you know, adding $10 a month to a $100,000 home, you know, those are high dollars.
and what about 124? I know we didn't do a map for 124, do we need to discuss
assume
anything
that's a
on that?
go.
I know, but do we need to, is there anything?
Do we need a deadline?
No.
Okay.
Tomorrow?
We still haven't heard from that one.
But let me,
Don't rush, we want to wait and see.
I'm just, believe me, there's a rush, but it's, when you have property ownership and management changes, it's a little frustrating.
We don't,
Just to get everybody's, we probably need to get you, we may have already done this, we just need to print it back out again, but the methodology is, the three is, you can do annexations legislatively, which is, for this type, is the easiest. But it's local legislation in order to do it, you have to have the consent. 100% method, which has the least criteria that go with it, and it's the 60% method. And so it's not a 60%. So, and that one has a higher standard, but it's not just owners, it's electors. So when you're doing residential high density, you got a lot of owners to contact and a lot of people who live there that have to be contacted too in order to get your percentages set to do the annexation. So that one doesn't
I
come.
think you emailed that to us at one point, but maybe if you could just send that email out again.
So what was the difference between an owner and an elector?
Somebody who is there that's a voter, you check the voter
Yeah.
rolls.
Oh, okay.
And so it's
So if it's
apartments.
rented and it's a tenant,
it tells you real quick how many units in that whole group are tenant.
It does, and you have to find them and get them signed up to sign the petition to come in too. It's not just the owner. You got one owner and then 2,000 people. It's a little harder. Harder message.
That's only with the 60/40, that's not with the 100%.
That's right.
and the legislative, you have to get all your representatives and state senator to sign off?
Those from your district, and the district that's affected by the annexation.
And you may say that's the easiest, but I don't, I'm
Yeah,
not sure
that
that's
was
the
very
case
easy.
in our case.
Well, and honestly, I don't, especially when you're talking about homeowners, I don't know that that's the way I would want to go necessarily. I would rather have people be given the choice and they choose to come in rather than me just clobbering them over the head with it.
But and here's the method. Every time I've been involved in one this big, it involves legislative, but it also involves a letter contact and clearing so that you can tell the legislature these people want to come in. And to me, it's never met opposition when people want to be in the city. You know, and they call them out. You know, that's why you get those different borders like that. It's some people said yes and some people said no, and they still don't leave islands, but that's, just contact them, get their permission, then go to the legislature, say these people want to sign up.
And you proceed basically based on that response. You could have 95% interest and, you know.
Yeah, I think in that case it's
5%,
easier to do, yeah.
I think Norcross, Duluth, and Berkeley Lake did a huge land grab before Peachtree was formed. Peachtree Corners was formed, and so possibly we need to reach out to them and see what they found to be effective methods to talking to their property owners.
We've talked to, is it Rusty? Rusty at Norcross.
And they also went through some issues with the county, so that may be helpful to talk to them about what type of obstacles we may find from the county.
Talk about that also.
Okay, update on Arc IT evaluation? Waiting on some numbers last time?
I don't have an update for you, I'm sorry. That's, the VC3 apparently is out of the Wi-Fi business, and they've given us a couple of contractors that they work with just to get a comparison, and I don't have those numbers yet.
Do you think you'll have them by our next meeting?
I hope so.
We'll put that on the next work session. Georgia City's week